are delighted to be able to host Bearing Witness, a fun-provoking display that you will hear more about in just a few minutes. I first became aware of this in June when I attended a conference in Trenton. I was fascinated by the presentation I saw that day, as I'm sure you will all be tonight. Our speaker is Minister Kerwin, Webb, the Second Baptist Church of Asbury Park. He serves as the church's youth and young adult pastor. He is also president of the Greater Redband Area NAACP and the education specialist for interfaith neighbors in Asbury Park. A native of Birmingham, Alabama, Kerwin earned a bachelor's degree in business administration from Alabama State University in 2004. In 2013, he relocated to New Jersey as a national service volunteer in the AmeriCorps program. After his year of service, he worked with Habitat for Humanity in Long County. Kerwin enrolled in Princeton Theological Seminary in 2016, earning a Master of Divinity degree 3 years later. He served as the vice moderator of the Association of Black Seminarians during the 2018 to 2019 school term. Kerwin is currently a liaison to the New Jersey Social Justice Remembrance Coalition, the sponsor of their Bearing Witness display. So please join me in welcoming Kerwin Webb.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I want to start by talking a little bit about where I come from and how I got to this point. Born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama, and on the way up, I got off our coalition partner, Janelle Ingram, who was driving with Janelle Cowley. We were talking about educational systems and what is taught and what is not taught in schools. And I've been asked a couple of times, how do I get involved in this type of work? Like, who wants to do social justice work? And I tell people, I think that I was created for it. In high school, my teachers made sure that I knew a more correct version of history, United States history, than some people got. And so from a very young age, I was aware of the difference in the way that people were treated. I was aware of the difference in the way that lives looked for people. And so I think it was there in high school, because I had teachers who cared so much, that made me want to be not ignorant to the things that were going on around me. And so anytime that I'm able to use my abilities or my skills or my knowledge, I lean into that. And that's sort of what brought me to some of this work. Let's see if I can get this back. Okay. So first I want to start with a video. This is from the Equal Justice Initiative's website, and it will kind of frame some of what our project is, and then I'll go into more detail.
After slavery was prohibited in 1865, formerly enslaved people in America were granted full citizenship, the right to vote, and under the 14th Amendment, protection from racial violence. Formerly enslaved people were promised land and opportunity, but most got nothing, as America quickly evolved into an era of racial terrorism and oppression of black citizens. White people in the South were angry that people formerly considered property were now equal citizens. Many turned to violence. In the years immediately following the Civil War, thousands of black people were murdered when they tried to claim their rights. Soon afterwards, federal troops were withdrawn from the South, ending a brief period of racial progress known as Reconstruction. Nationwide resistance to racial equality resulted in the reestablishment of racial subordination through bias laws, disenfranchisement, and terrorism, most dramatically enforced through lynchings. Racial terror lynchings of black people defined a shameful era in America. These lynchings differed from the hanging of white people in places where there was no functioning criminal justice system. Racial terror lynchings were directed at all black people. They enforced compliance with racial hierarchy and white supremacy, and ensured racial segregation and denial of equal rights. In 1916, in Cedar Bluff, Mississippi, a young black man named Jeff Brown accidentally bumped into a white woman while running against a train. A white mob stopped him and lynched him, beating him, then hanging him from a tree for his insolence and carelessness. His public murder was not about criminal punishment, but was instead about maintaining racial hierarchy and terrorizing the black community. White town residents proudly sold photographs of Mr. Brown's brutalized body hanging from the tree for 5 cents each. The Equal Justice Initiative has documented thousands of racial terror lynchings between 1877 and 1950. EJI has confirmed the lynchings of over 4,000 black people who were tortured, maimed, beaten, shot, hung, and burned alive by crowds of white people, often with the cooperation of law enforcement or government officials. The terror of lynching was so widespread that millions of black people fled the South and settled in the urban North and West as refugees of American terror, shaping the current demographic geography of the United States. On July 5, 1933, an older black woman named Elizabeth Lawrence reprimanded a group of white children who threw rocks at her as she walked home from work. Word spread that a black woman had dared to rebuke white children. That night, an angry mob of white citizens lynched Ms. Lawrence for her audacity. Her home was then burned to the ground. Her son, Alexander, fled to Boston. Racial terror lynchings often have the atmosphere of carnivals with food vendors and souvenir stands. Hundreds or thousands of white people would often gather to watch and take part in the torture and murder of black citizens. There has been no effort in America to confront this legacy of racial terror. While hundreds of Confederate monuments litter the landscape in southern states, there has been no public recognition of the violence endured by black people. On October 7, 1910, a white mob in Montgomery, Alabama tried to abduct and lynch black men being held in jail on suspicion of miscegenation or interracial sexual relations. When they were unable to get the men out of the jail, the frustrated mob lynched a black taxi driver named John Bell, who was sitting in his cab nearby. No one was ever arrested or prosecuted for his murder. EJI's Community Remembrance Project collects soil on the many sites where terror lynchings occurred. Jars labeled with the names of murdered black citizens are on public display at EJI, a powerful visual reminder of history we must face. EJI is working to create a permanent memorial to honor victims of lynching, a place to reflect on America's history of racial violence. We hope to place historical markers at hundreds of lynching sites around the country. Contemporary issues like police violence, excessive punishment in the criminal justice system, and even harsh and punitive treatment of children of color in schools and on streets cannot be understood without a deeper examination into our history of racial violence. More truthful discourse and reflection on our history of racial injustice is essential for us to achieve racial equity. Confronting the legacy of lynching is critical to advancing this conversation. We hope you will join our effort to help towns, cities, and states confront and recover from these tragic histories of racial violence through truth and reconciliation, where there can truly be equal justice for all.
And so we are here, I am here representing the New Jersey Social Justice Remembrance Coalition as part of EJI's Community Remembrance Project. Our work started in 2019, and we commenced with our historical marker installation this past June, right before Juneteenth. Point to it. All right. The voice that you heard on the short clip was that of Brian Stevenson, the executive director of the Equal Justice Initiative. He was the founding director, and Brian Stevenson actually graduated from law school, I believe, in Massachusetts, and then relocated first to Georgia, then he ended up in Alabama. And initially he was working to help death row inmates to get legal representation, because in the South, it wasn't guaranteed that people who were convicted of crimes would get their just representation. And so he started as a death row attorney pro bono, helping people to get representation. And over 30, 35 years, his work has expanded to where he's opened up the Legacy Museum and the Legacy Museum and the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. And that is to help Americans recognize the history that happened and what in some ways is still occurring today. So our coalition started with this March. One of our co-founders, Tim Hartley, noted that he saw the uproar or the celebration with Barack Obama, First Lady Michelle Obama, Congressman John Lewis, as they walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. This moment was significant because 50 years prior or so, John Lewis and many other civil rights leaders were attempting to walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge to go from Selma, Alabama to Montgomery, Alabama to try to register to vote. Because at that time, voter disenfranchisement was a thing. And so as a way to galvanize attention and protest, there was a large crowd that were walking across the bridge, and they were met by Alabama state troopers. And those of you who know history know that John Lewis had his skull fractured by an Alabama state trooper. There were many people who were trampled by the troopers and their horses as they were trying to run and flee from the violence. And so, seeing this march and hearing about it, Tim Hartley and his wife Rainey, who would take a yearly trip somewhere in the country, they decided that one of their trips would be to Alabama, just to see what this is all about. And they ended up at the Legacy Museum. This is an image of the museum, and as you can see on the screen, there's incarcerated 8 million. A little bit further back, segregated 10 million. Then terrorized 9 million. And these are estimates because, of course, no one can tell the exact figures, but the Legacy Museum is dedicated to helping people to understand the history that is around them, that surrounds them every day. Because this history actually helps us to understand why things are the way that they are. And the point of this museum is to immerse you into what that terroristic history is like. And I don't think I've known anyone who has gone to that museum and come away the same. And the reason is, if you are human at all, if you have a heart, if you have compassion, and you see and hear the stories and the pictures of what happens to human beings, you will be moved as well. So Tim and Rainey went, they were looking through, they were mortified by what some of the things that they saw, but like a lot of people who live in the North, they mistakenly believed that it was only those crazy people down south. We in the North, we have it together. We know how to collaborate and work together. Until Tim came up against this this reality, that as you walk in the memorial, the museum is one part, but then there's an outdoor memorial that looks like this, and these big hanging boulders, where, as Shauna said on the way up, they look like tombstones. And each one is suspended from the ceiling of this, this outdoor exhibit. And what you find on the face of these boulders, these monuments, are the names, dates, and counties, if they are available, for people who were lynched on that day in that county. There are some where you have 1 or 2 names, where maybe it would have been a husband and a wife. There are some where you have 8 or 9 names, where it was a mass lynching. And the reason that DJI does this is so that you, as you walk through it, you cannot miss the reality with which the evil and hatred that has taken hold of some people. And so as you're walking through, you start at eye level with these big monuments, and you see the names. And as you continue to go around, the floor goes down. So eventually you are looking up and they're hanging from the ceiling, almost as if you were looking at someone hanging from a tree. That imagery, that type of interactive experience helps you to understand just how dramatic this is. And it's not just a few. There are thousands of these monuments that are there. Here are more artwork from the exhibit, and these are images of what some of the torture tracks would So we were encouraged to work with, so when we had questions about what were the typical process or what things did they do and methods, they would tell us to reach out to other coalitions to kind of get ideas. It's not a collaborative working thing, except if those two work together, need to work together for a purpose. But EJI is sort of kind of like that central hub for information or research, or if you're trying to do anything like that.
Oh, so you, just because my family is from South Carolina, Georgia, so like going Ichi down there, so it's like all of the people that passed away. So like the stories are getting lost. So I was wondering like how do you start like just find out any basic information, because especially like with the Golden Ichi culture, I know they really records and stuff like that. It's like everybody knows just chipping stuff out, but you know. So how do you start? You know, it's like four times in this program, like kind of ways to start kind of like a famous history or history of like anything.
Yeah, so those birth and death certificates, marriage licenses, stuff like that, it's generally going to start from a name that somebody gives you in the family, and then yeah, you try to research property records or those types of things. If there are people or lynchings that happen in that area that EJI knows about and is documented, they were more than willing to share the information they had with us that may have some cross reference to those names. And so with the fact that people are dying out, what I'd say is a good project to probably try to start is like a oral history project. Let's try to get as many people to record their memories as possible, so that once they are gone, if something comes up, we can go back and say, oh, you know what? Auntie so-and-so said this, and Uncle John did that. That's one of the things that I really want to do for some of the people in Monmouth County, because although I'm not from New Jersey, I do recognize there's a lot of history in Monmouth County that hasn't been documented in books, but is within people, whether it's churches or organizations. And so trying to collect that. And actually the Monmouth County Historical Association did an oral history project that I suggested a couple of people for, but stuff like that. Does that answer it?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is, you know, and it's an open question, is New Jersey open to the idea of researching if further lynchings were taking place in Jersey? As a whole, as the state of New Jersey, is that even something that's to be put on a bigger scale and say, hey, let's research and backtrack and see if there were more lynchings than just this one?
I'll give you two answers. I'll give you one, the coalition answer, and then I'll give you the Kerwin answer. The coalition answer is I'm not totally sure. I have my doubts. The Kerwin answer is no. Too political, too challenging, too dangerous. Right now, the two initiatives, that one is law and one is pending, that I don't think is going to get much movement. One is the homicide curriculum that was passed into law until 2002, just 20 years ago, which mandates that every high school teach African American history. Ask me if every high school is teaching African American history, right? So we will write this thing on paper and say, yes, we've done it, but actually enforcing it, probably not. And so now, if we were to ask and say, hey, can we actually research and see if there were more lynchings? That's probably going to be a non-starter. What I will say though is, an elder at the church that I preach at now, I was talking to him yesterday, and he said that someone brought him information about another possible lynching in New Jersey. And he said it was in Princeton, and that he was giving a historian and researcher to do some work to see. So I'm willing to bet that there are more. The thing is, can you document it? But if that's something that you're interested in, I'm probably certain you can find somebody in the coalition that might want to partner with you and do some of this work. Because I think it's really important, and I think it will help us to see that New Jersey is, for all its great parts, New Jersey has got problems too.
And another thing I want to add, just through this presentation of you having a soil sitting there, it just opened up my mind to the fact that, you know, the soil and us going back in history and speaking about, you know, the soil and the grounds and where lynching took place is almost identical to the blood that sits on the corners every day. You know, even where we currently are, we have to identify that there has to be blood in this exact area where we are right now, right? So it's not even just about the soil, it's about history, period. And the fact that there's blood that's shed every day.
Yeah. One of the things that we said earlier when we were doing this, we were careful to make sure that we didn't call it dirt. Right? There's a difference between soil and dirt. Things grow out of soil. Nothing really grows out of dirt. And so, out of this soil, because we do believe that there's blood in the soil, and that the soil and the blood tell stories, and that those stories are the heartbreaks of how we fail to be Americans. And the only way to correct that is to have these difficult conversations, to have these debates about what is right and proper and what is acceptable and what's not. And I do believe that, no, let me back up and I'll say this. As we're riding up, we're talking in the car, and our coalition at the max, you probably have maybe 50 or 60 different people at certain points that are connected. So we had 4 different initiatives: the documentary, the soil collection, the essay contest, and the marker dedication. And all of those, because of the enormity of the work, each of those groups work separately, but then we come together monthly to kind of share updates. But we have diversity in terms of race, sex, income, religious affiliation, all of those diversities that we have. And I was reflecting with Sean, like we, despite all of the different personalities and the heaviness of the topic, we've not had issues where people are disagreeing or hating each other inside of our coalition, which means that it's possible for people who are trying to get to a certain place of understanding. It's possible. It's just the vehicles aren't there. And so what we want our coalition to be is that vehicle that can come up to you and say, you know what, this piece of art that you have here that you celebrate, it's problematic, and here's why. You may decide to take it down, you may not, but we are going to respectfully let you know how this is reflective to a different people. Because we all have blinders and blind spots, and unless we have somebody to share with us, or what I call in my classes, we need our mirrors to tell us the truth about ourselves, even when we don't like it. And so, our coalition hopes to be that. We hope to be a mirror for society about where we are, what we do, and where we need to be. Any more?
Earlier, you kind of gave us a call to action, like there's a lot of work to do. So for someone who wants to maybe get involved but doesn't know where to begin, can you give us some of that?
For someone who wants to get involved but doesn't know where to begin, I would say start with what is your interest area. What things are you interested in? If I'm interested in researching, then maybe a project like my man was talking about would be helpful for you. Because if I like to find things, there are things for me to find. Everybody's not a presenter. Everybody doesn't like to stand in front of people and talk. But if that's your thing, we can find a place for you. But what I'd say is educate yourself about the issues, both historic and current, because there is a place for your voice. There's a place for your intelligence. There's a place for your opinion. And it is most times the lack of an opinion or the lack of an opposing voice that allows people to do things unabated as if they're okay. Now, if I'm an elected official and I'm doing this thing and I have a town hall full of people saying, I don't want you to do that thing, what am I going to do? Not do that thing? Or try to do it in a different way where you don't see me? But if it's empty and nobody's stopping me, then it's like, hey, it must be okay with me. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of our politics has become. I don't do politics because it's dirty, it's corrupt, it's all, we can have excuses and reasons why. But I will tell you that if you believe voting is the only way, then you're mistaken. You're missing half, right? You can vote, but then where's the accountability? The accountability is showing up. The accountability is making it known what challenges are there. So when we lay down and we don't show up, we can't get mad that people do what they're going to do. People are people. Humans are going to be humans. And it takes the good humans to stand up against the bad humans. And I guess, depending on how many good humans stand up against the bad humans, it will tell us where we go. But research, read, find your passion, find a way to get involved. There is something you can do. It could be creating posts that educate people. It could be organizing events where people can hear other voices. It could be creating intentionally diverse communities where people talk about these issues. One of the things that Main Public Library does a monthly event called Let's Talk About Race. And it's not always just like bashing one thing or another, but it's like really uplifting talks. This past month was about Asbury Park and the neighborhood change or the gentrification that has happened there. So it's education because you can learn things from the past, right? How neighborhoods change and you get to see what was opportunities at one point, now we're priced out. And so how do we get better from these educational opportunities? So whatever it is that you can do something. Do something.
So would you say education is the key to empowerment?
I think education precedes empowerment. You cannot be empowered if you're not educated. If I don't know what's going on, there's no power that I have. Because if I'm not able to talk to you in an intelligent way, then you're going to dismiss me right off the bat. If I'm educated about the subject, I'm educated about the history, I'm educated about the current events, then you almost can't stop me. So I'm almost by default empowered once I get the education.
Yes, sir.
How did you embark on this particular topic? And why is it so passionate to you? And how did you come, well, I'll let you answer those first two questions.
All right, so I'm coming back for the third. How did I embark on this particular topic? It called me. It called me because our co-founder, Tim Harper, the guy and his wife who were doing the traveling, he didn't live in the area near where the lynching took place. So although he lived in Monmouth County and he wanted to be a part of this, he had to have a coalition of people from that local area, organizations, individuals, to do the work. That's kind of part of EJI's thing. And I was in Alabama on a civil rights pilgrimage with high school students from here in New Jersey when he called me. And the very next day, our trip was going to be to the EJI Museum. So I say it called me because it was like, wait, this was not something that I wanted to do or even knew about. But when I was called and asked to be a part of it, to make up the coalition, I was like, okay, yeah, I'll sign up and just kind of go to the meeting and do whatever. But somehow I got to be the liaison and kind of is the go-between. But it also is work that I'm passionate about anyway. And I think because of growing up in Birmingham and my teachers, but also my parents, my mom and my aunt. 2 of the 4 little girls that were killed in the 16th Street bombing, they were friends with my mom and my aunt. So they knew these stories and they poured them into us. And so once the opportunity came, well, back up. I believe this word called me because after I got to a sense of adulthood and enlightenment, I realized that my life was not for me. And so I said to God, hey, whatever you're going to do, I'll do it. Wherever you're going to go, I'll go. And so anytime I'm able to use gifts that I have, or somebody can see something in me that adds value, I tend to say yes. And things like this that forces difficult conversations, I love that. I love making people uncomfortable and having them to go deeper than the surface, because that's how we get to the real humanity of who we are. I hope that answered the first 2. Now, what's the third?
Yeah, you actually answered, well, you said, so how long have you been with NGI? How long have you been with them?
So our partnership started with BJI, I think it was formalized in like August of 2020. Yeah.
So that was during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
How was, not to cut you off, but how was that working with, part of the organization during the pandemic?
No, it was pretty cool. It was good because this was still when virtual meetings and Zoom was still fairly new. So it was like, hey, I can meet with somebody in Alabama, and now it's like I don't want to do another Zoom meeting. But it was all right because they were very receptive to what we're trying to do, and everyone in the coalition would bring their ideas, and we could see the progress that we were having. First, from joining together when people didn't know anybody, like there were maybe 3 or 4 people that knew each other from different places, but to actually do the amount of work that we did and the incredible logistics that it took, like our coalition was amazing, and people just gave of themselves. And there's actually a documentary that is on its way to being finished, and we don't have it yet. But there's a documentary that kind of follows the work. And at some point, we hope that we maybe can come back and share it and have a Q&A or a talk about it because it's really, really good. And you get to hear from the people who made the work possible or did make the coalition's work possible. So yeah, two years roughly that we've been involved in. But here's the difference, or here's the thing. Once we're done with the Remembrance Project, which are the soil collection, marker installation, essay contest, our formal partnership with BJI will dissolve because it's completed, but the work of our coalition will continue. And so what we're looking at going towards next is implementation of homicide curriculum, reparations task force, and some other things that could be helpful for us to make, bring some type of equality in this thing.
So you actually work, you actually work with NJI?
Yes, so NJSJRC is a separate organization than EJI. EJI sponsors the Community Remembrance Project, but they pay for the marker to be fabricated and those types of things as a way to partner, but not for them to take over what we do. I see the wheels turning here.
Yes, it's like speaking of comment, I would be interested to know how the curators in Alabama knew about Mr. Johnson, where the person you work with happened to be there and said, wait a minute, in New Jersey, how did they find out about Mr. Johnson?
So I think EJI knew about Mr. Johnson before Tim went there, and partially because of the work of the Mingo Jack Committee, who had the marker installed in 2012.
Okay, so they collected nationwide or whatever they could find, and then.
Yep, they collected all of the things, and then whoever comes and says, hey, I live in this county, how do I start? That's it. Yep. You're welcome.
Question. You guys are saying NJI? Or
No,
EJI?
EJI is Equal Justice Initiative. That's the organization in Montgomery.
Okay.
We are the NJSJRC. So we were partnered with EJI for the purpose of doing the project.
Okay. So as far as EJI, what was the motivation to even begin to connect with you guys? Like being as though there's a financial, as in they're sponsoring everything.
Yeah.
What makes the organization want to even sponsor something like this?
So I think it all comes from Brian Stevens and his desire to help other people, those less fortunate, right? And so I think part of them sponsoring this is so that communities can recognize the history that they have, that they share together, but then also to make the world a better place by facilitating these conversations. As I had to fill out the application to become a coalition partner, it talked about how will you deal with people who disagree with you? How will you engage with people who are opposed to what you're doing? Those types of things. So their work is to really try to help people get past the talking out of the side of your neck and really talk face to face. So that's their whole thing, is to say, we have done research, we found these lynchings, and we think the world would be better if each community that had one could form a coalition and come together and talk about their shared history and then write a different future.
And I think also to some degree, it's about fleshing out these individuals who were lynched. You know,
That's right.
having a name and a face.
Giving them human
and a story.
characteristics. Yeah, making human the people who, during the time that they lived, they weren't human, they were subhuman. So yes, making sure that we treat people with dignity and respect, honor the family or the children that are left. So humanizing people and helping to bridge the gap. I think that's how you're answering.
Yes, I was asking, okay, we noted that, how true it is, we noted that New Jersey was the last state to give up slaves.
Yep.
So how do you find the truth of New Jersey's gonna hide its dark past?
How do I know
How
truth?
to find the truth if you got people inside that wanna hide the dark past of the lynchings that happened? Because we know that KKK has headquarters right here in Farmingdale, New Jersey, or Homedale, New Jersey. Which one of the two or both?
Both.
Now, how do we get rid of those people that's behind, law enforcement behind some of this?
Good question. So I don't think we allow them to hinder us. We just figure out which ways to go around it. Like there are ways to dig up the history of what's happening around the state without having politicians or elected officials on your side. It's just a matter of knowing how they might respond to what you find. So because I think in some ways this work still is somewhat quiet, we can get away with things that people don't recognize yet. And so until we find something, like if we found that there were 50 lynchings right here in Newark or in Trenton, right on the Capitol grounds, if we find something like that, then we're probably gonna find some politicians or whatnot that'll have something to say. But until we stumble upon something like that, I think we have free reign to really dig and find what we need to. With resources like EJI or other organizations that they help us. Like there's the Berlin Center for Justice, there are different agencies and organizations that if we needed to, we could tap into and help find something. Are you willing to be a part of the inquiry people? My friends will tell you.
We'll talk about that after.
Okay. My friends said, be careful what you say to Kerwin, because he'll find something for you to do.
I also got another, two things. To segue off of what you just said, you just said if we were to do more research to find out that there were 50 lynches in North New Jersey, and I see what you're saying. So my thing is, the work is to be done. If that was to take place, is EJI willing to take on that spotlight?
I believe
Is
that.
that, like, are we prepared to go from it just being, this is a display for New Jersey? Are we prepared for the fact that there could possibly be 49 more people that have been lynched? And what that could do as far as a spotlight on an organization that's funding something like that?
Yeah, I think EJI would be fine with that. I think that's part of what they've shifted their work from. Like initially, Brian Stevenson was a death row trial attorney or appeals attorney, and I think almost the entire focus now is racial justice, racial reconciliation. And so, if we were to do some digging and to find some information, I think they would absolutely put their resources behind making sure that it can be documented the right way and presented that way. Yeah, I don't think they would be afraid of that at all.
So they're fully aware of the possibility of repercussions and understanding that that's possible, but will still continue to fight?
Yeah.
As
So
an organization.
listen.
You don't-
EJI, Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama, is actually built on former slave land. Like they are right there where bodies used to come on the Alabama River, where bodies used to come in and go out. So I think they're very aware of, because I can imagine some of the stuff that they dealt with to build that in Montgomery, which was the first capital of the Confederacy. Like, this is like right there in the heart of Dixie. So I don't think Brian Stevenson is under any false impressions that he's making nice for people who like the past. But I think that he has proven by the courage of his convictions that he and his organization will stand and do what's right. And that's one of the reasons I'm okay with being a partner with him, because I'm not going to shy away from confrontation either. And if there is an organization that's going to tuck and run if something got difficult, that would be a waste of my time.
That's a fact.
And just to build on that, what do you see as you being, the representative of EJI in a sense, because there's a partnership? Where do you see as being, for your thought process, understanding that they're comfortable? Like where does that comfortability come in as an organization that's funding something like that, to be able to say, whatever comes out of that door, where does that come from? Where does that date back from 10 years back when we started with this project, and over time we've grown to just, okay, we've opened up that door, we know we can't close that door, we're willing to take on opening this next door?
No, I think it's, I really believe it is in the founder, in Brian Stevenson. I don't know if you've seen his, he's got a couple of movies out. One is called Just Mercy. And it's a really good, almost documentary of the injustice that happens in the criminal justice system in Alabama. But I really believe that him seeing that, because he was a lawyer, he graduated law school and went to Alabama, went to Georgia, and I think he thought that the law is equal and fair. Going up against that and seeing what the real South is like, as far as small town or rural South, where the sheriff is the everything and nothing happens without him, he saw that, hey, this is what the law says, but this is what the law means. And so I believe out of that, he tried to make sure that the best I can, I'm going to create a space for people to get to treated justice. So yeah, I think it's more of who he is and what he put into the DNA of the organization that gives them that confidence in who they are.
Last but not least for me, do you know of any other states besides New Jersey that lynching takes place, or are you interested in finding that out and bringing that forth? Or is that just like a surpassed way between New Jersey and like the North and the South? Because conveniently enough, we do have other states. So let's say the tri-state area, we're going to give New Jersey, Connecticut, and New York, okay? Besides New Jersey, certainty, it has to be things that have taken place in those other states.
Yeah.
And also Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
a neighboring state where there is Commonwealth law.
Yeah.
So, conveniently enough, I don't know if you're able to, answer that question, or is that something to be able to, is that something, we can, answer later on, or?
I think we had the map of Britain.
Yeah, so there's a way to find out all of the states that EJI has documented their lynching in. I know there was one in a place in Delaware somewhere, because that was one of the coalitions that our representatives told us that we can reach out to about the project. But yeah, there's on there, all of these in red. So
It's kind of difficult to see, but okay, I
New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York,
okay.
Chicago, Indiana, Missouri, pretty much all over.
Okay.
pretty much all over. Now, the question is whether these towns or these groups have formed coalitions to claim their markers. Some may not have.
And this is what I wanted to know, in any way, shape, or form, or fashion, do you have any other, resources or outlets or anything of that nature?
That's their job.
Connected with these other
No.
places that have to gather that information, so that way it can be more informative, you know, to us and everyone else,
As a whole.
as a whole, collectively.
No.
So I don't know, I haven't,
So I do understand that we have to wrap up, so is there any chance you have a card, and, therefore I can reach out to you and, you know, and ask you some more questions, if you know that that's feasible.
yeah, I'm gonna see if I brought cards this time. Most times I forget cards.
That would be appreciated.
Is some of that on the GS website?
Yeah,
If
so
you'd like